Men of Reddit, what are some less obvious red flags about men you would want to caution women against? Story 1. I briefly dated a guy who told me that four of his ex girlfriends had restraining orders against him and they were all crazy. I told him I didn't want to see him anymore, and he was genuinely surprised and asked, why? I said either you're the problem or need better judgment skills in choosing partners, and neither of those is okay. Then he texted me, maybe I should start thinking about murder. Pretty terrifying. Glad I got out so early. Story 2. My best friend entered the dating pool after being in a relationship for a long time. She only wanted to hook up for a while and was open about it up front, even before the actual date. There were guys still insistent on wanting a relationship with her, and once they won her over, not at the same time, and both times it took a while, they immediately dropped her. One even confessed to already having a girlfriend and pretended to want a relationship to make chicks down to fuck. Story 3. If anything happens to him and he constantly shifts blame to someone else, something else, or the situation, that's a big red flag. Sooner or later, everything will be your fault. Also, if their story, complaint, rant, or explanation sounds two-sided, again, unable to take the blame themselves, they lack empathy. Story 4. I saw them, and we went to the mall together. I went into about 7 different stores he wanted to go into. Sports stores, video game stores, comic stores. I finally found a store I'd like to go into, and not even 5 minutes in, he said, come on, we're leaving. The man just ordering me to do as he said was enough. I couldn't believe that I couldn't be in one store I liked for not even a couple of minutes. Story 5. I dated a guy who would ask every Friday night, where do you want to eat? I'd throw out my ideas and he'd say, no. Unfortunately, it took me a long time to realize I was playing a game of figuring out what he wanted to eat. Eventually, I'd make one suggestion, he'd say no, and then I'd tell him he had to offer something up. That became an accusation of how I'm incapable of making decisions. I worked successfully as a project manager, making decisions all day. I just wanted to eat without it being a problem. That accusation of indecisiveness pointed out how much this was just weird power dynamics he was playing out. Story 6. I broke up with my ex because he had a full-on tantrum because of a board game. They were playing Civilization. He declared the truth with another player, went on to aggressively attack the other players, then completely freaked out because the player he had a ceasefire with spent turns building up and then shot him. At the same time, he was overcommitted on the board. He legit tried to throw the guy out of the game store that my ex, no longer worked for and ban him for life. Story 7. If a guy initially does the minimum of what you want in a long-term relationship, it'll be well below your standards after a few years. I would expect about half of what you see in the first year. Story 8. Many months ago, the first girl I ever dated, I remember thinking, I love this girl, and it would be perfect if only I inserted several fundamental qualities about her that were incompatible with me. Of course, it didn't work out. Then I repeated that mistake about 6 more times. In the 7th long-term relationship, I remember not being able to come up with anything I would change. We've been together for 10 years, married for 5. She's amazing and perfect. I still wouldn't change a thing. Story 9. I dated a guy who introduced me to his closest friends after about 3 months. That's considerably good time, I guess. Normal? While in a relationship, I noticed he rarely called or talked to them. Then after we broke up, I stayed in touch with some of his best friends. We became excellent friends, and they'd tell me, yeah, he never really talked to any of us, like for a long time. And some of them were like, yeah, he's kind of a weird guy. When I asked why he introduced them as his best friends, they were as confused as I was. Story 10. When he looks to you as his sole source of happiness and entertainment. This usually means they cannot manage their emotions or have healthy coping mechanisms. In addition, if you're in it for the long term, there will be times that you'll get sick of each other, and a guy needs some hobbies that can take his attention away to give you space. This can be an open door for manipulation. Story 11. My husband always tells me I'm his entire life. When he's not at work, he wants to be with me. He has no friends. When we're dating, I thought it was refreshing to have a man put me first and be obsessed with me. Unfortunately, after being married for a few years, I'm suffocating. He blames me every problem since I'm the only person he interacts with out of work. Story 12. I have a friend like this. I call her the relationship chameleon because all of a sudden, the things she likes, be it hobbies, interests, music, movies, etc., became his favorites, even to the point that it could be stuff he actively hated before. Overpleasers, overcompensators often will get angry at the partner after a while because the extreme servitude and effort aren't reciprocated. I did this all for you. What about me? Attitude can get a bit scary. Story 13. As a man and someone who dates men, here's a big one that may seem obvious on the surface, but it isn't always easy to listen to. If you get even a slight gut feeling that tells you, hey, this kind of guy reminds me of insert terrible man X person, it would be best if you listen to it. I've never gotten that feeling that it wasn't right in the end. Listen to yourself. You might not know why you feel that way, but there's always something to it. Story 14. I was unexpectedly driving his car back to his place after leaving work because he needed to be picked up from the dentist after oral surgery. He was in much pain but polite and friendly to every nurse there, then proceeded to growl and rage at me the entire time. Then, when we got to CVS, he was a dream to the pharmacy staff, then an asshole to me when I dropped him off at home. So here I was, driving his car back to his house after getting dropped off by a coworker back at the dentist so he'd have his vehicle the next day after being verbally abused for the last 2 hours. It was like night and day between how he treated me and everyone else. Story 15. I've seen stories of guys who rage and break their things when gaming. As someone who has been playing video games for about 20 years, that's not normal, nor is it okay. Like swearing, sure, that's understandable, but getting angry and breaking stuff? It's just violent behavior and a red flag. Story 16. I wish I could explain that this is a red flag for a parent too. I have PTSD and am immediately angered whenever someone slams a door shut, throws things, or slams shit down or any surface because it's what my dad would do when he got angry. So for 29 years, I thought I was reacting because I found it disrespectful, but instead, I was slamming the accelerator into the floor of my fight response. Story 17. Men make fun of the way someone looks, especially older men. Many guys do this when they're young and obnoxious, but most grow out of it. You can think someone is butt ugly, but keep it to yourself. Or at least you should. It takes maturity and then realization that people are born who they are, and not all of them are eye candy. It's gross for the person on the receiving end, making the guy say it looks like a mean-spirited dick. Story 18. If he disregards something small, he'll break your opinion about something significant, and that can go pretty dark pretty quickly. Every questionable thing a person does that you excuse because you want to believe the best about that person should be taken as a yellow flag. Step back from the situation and assess it logically and in the context of other behaviors or opinions. If you continually have to interpret their behavior only in the best possible light for it to be okay, you should run. Story 19. If you feel like you're babysitting them, get out. But on the other hand, supporting your partner and treating them like a toddler is the only way to get through to them. Also, don't be impressed with the bare minimum. For example, he should know how to cook, should know how to do his laundry, should be keeping his living space clean with proper hygiene, and so on. Story 20. A man who was raised by parents who did every little thing for him, gave him zero chores or responsibilities, never uttered the word no, and gave in to his every want and whim is a man you should run away from as fast as you can.